Hello, and welcome to NICU Lighting, supporting health, comfort, and well-being for newborns, family, and staff through lighting design. My name is Tammy Thompson with Institute for Patient-Centered Design, and I will be facilitating this webinar with my colleague Andrea Hall. The Institute is a nonprofit organization established to develop and inspire creative design solutions that promote healing and wellness. We operate primarily through the services of volunteers. They're practicing professionals in the fields of healthcare and design, as well as patients and parent volunteers. In 2013, we were proud to develop the Patient and Family-Centered NICU for the Healthcare Design Conference in Orlando, Florida. This project allowed our team of researchers, patient groups, and over 25 companies that you see here to detail a neonatal intensive care unit space in an evidence-based design process. This was a tremendous learning experience for us, so this year we are creating learning opportunities to share these lessons with the profession. The NICU lighting session was the first in a series that will familiarize you with the major design components that we considered on this project. This session has been so popular that we are broadcasting it live for the third time this year. For those who are local to Atlanta or will be visiting the Atlanta area, we invite you to see our website to learn more about the tours of the actual model, which is on exhibit at NetSpan Healthcare. For all others, please join our mailing list for updates on future sessions. Now I'd like to ask Lauren Roberts, our lead presenter for today's program, to introduce herself. Lauren?
Thank you, Tammy. Hello, everyone. My name is Lauren Roberts, and I'm one of two healthcare market development managers for Visa Lighting. I have a background in lighting design, specializing in healthcare for the last 9 years. I am LC and EDAC certified and serve as a member on the IS Healthcare Committee. Thank you so much for your time today, everyone. I'm really happy to be part of this presentation.
Before we get started, there are a few housekeeping items that I'd like to cover. This program is registered for one Health, Safety, and Welfare Continuing Education Learning Unit by the American Institute of Architects. Architects may submit their AIA numbers through the quiz registration following the course. All others may request a certificate of attendance through that same form. Unless otherwise noted, the following content presented is the property of the respective presenters. Please request permission before duplicating or distributing this material. The contact information for each party will be available on the course handout. Course description. This course will go over the needs of an appropriate NICU lighting design as well as future design trends. We'll review the body's photobiological response to daylight and our 24-hour clocks, as well as visual lighting spectrum and how to apply it. Lauren?
Let's review the learning objectives. At the end of this course, participants should be able to discuss the body's biological and physiological responses to light, analyze a neonate's eye development and the importance of a responsive lighting design, identify key lighting sources and how to apply them when designing, and review NICU lighting design trends, zones, and controls. So let's get started. So before we get into NICU lighting and design, I'd like to start by explaining the circadian rhythm and how natural daylight affects our minds and bodies. The circadian rhythm is a roughly 24-hour cycle in the physiological processes of a living being, including plants and animals. Circadian rhythms are important in determining the sleeping and feeding patterns of all animals, including human beings. There are clear patterns of brainwave activity, hormone production, cell regeneration, and other biological activities throughout this daily cycle. One hormone example is melatonin. This is the sleep hormone found naturally in the body that helps to regulate our sleep. Visual cues such as sunlight and temperature help to maintain and regulate your 24-hour body clock, including hormones and other biological responses. So let's go through a typical day. As we start to wake, our blood pressure starts to rise and our melatonin secretion stops. We have our highest alertness late in the morning with our best coordination time around 2:30. Around 7 p.m. at night, we experience our highest body temperature. At about 9 p.m., our melatonin secretion starts again, and the cycle is repeated. At night, we experience our deepest sleep. In the early morning, we are at our lowest body temperature as our cycle then begins again. So notice what the sunlight and the colors in the sky are doing throughout the day. There are several visual cues that help our internal body clock and trigger the changes in that 24-hour cycle. So how can lighting support that 24-hour routine? Light levels should maintain brighter light during the day to keep us awake, and dimmer light, if any, at night to help us sleep. Amber warm light at night is a good tool for observation where brighter light levels may interfere, and we'll speak more to this later. In shift work or nursing areas where daylight is not as abundant, it's important to keep daylight, views to nature, and lighting control available. When seasonal changes take place and the evenings become darker earlier in the day and the need for lighting control that supports the circadian rhythm grows even stronger. Studies have shown that infants in NICUs with day-night cycled lighting actually had increased weight gain, earlier initiation of oral feedings, and a decreased number of days on the ventilator, and under phototherapy had enhanced motor conditions. With reduced light levels, so the opposite, the infants had lower respiratory rates, reduced time on mechanical ventilation and oxygen support, and lower activity levels. Because daylighting is so important to our 24-hour clock, designers have made windows and views to nature a standard in healthcare design and patient rooms. Studies have shown that views to nature and design that coordinates with our circadian rhythm not only makes us feel better, but actually helps us heal faster. Sunlight also provides vitamin D, which supports our bodily functions and bone structure as well. We must also keep in mind that views to nature and added daylight can increase our building's solar heat gain and light levels. Daylighting can also cause glare and reflect on glossy surfaces, which we'll also get into more later. Designing shading systems should be an important part of your design for this reason, though. So views to nature, glare, and heat gain all need to be balanced to work together. To really understand our circadian rhythm and how lighting affects us, we must first understand how we see light and the different parts of the eye that lighting affects. Lighting plays a key role in the developing parts of the eye, in not only babies, but throughout our lives. So I'm just going to go through the different parts of the eye for everyone here to get a better understanding. So first you have the pupil. This controls the amount of light entering the eye. In a newborn, it actually takes 2 weeks for the pupils to enlarge and start seeing a range of light and dark images. The retina is the light-sensitive tissue in the back of the eye that converts light into electric impulses. As this develops, the ability to see and recognize pattern will improve, which is important for a newborn's eye development. The macula is at the back area of the retina and is used for central vision. It is not fully developed until age 4. So in a premature infant, their eyelids will actually be thinner, allowing more light to get in. There is a decreased ability to constrict and control that light exposure. They also tend to open their eyes more, and so often the increased lighting control and dimming is even more critical in these situations because they can't control necessarily blinking or closing their eyes and have that thicker eyelid to prevent lighting from getting in themselves. So we need to help them as much as we can through design and through proper lighting design. So now I'm just going to go through a baby's stages in life. So in a baby's first year of life, the developing eye process begins at 0 to 3 months of age. Babies cannot focus more than 8 to 10 inches from their face and are sensitive to bright light. High contrast images like their mother's eyes and face begin to attract attention in the early weeks because they can see the white eye versus the darker pupil and the darker skin color, so they're picking up on that contrast. Eyes may also wander or look cross because they're learning how to coordinate and focus at the same time. Eye-hand coordination also begins as they start reaching out towards objects. Depth perception is not present at birth, so at 5 to 8 months of age, the control of the eye movement and eye-body coordination skills will improve here. Eyes will begin to see depth and start working together. Babies will begin to have good color vision and will see red first, actually. So next, crawling will begin and will aid in eye, hand, foot, body coordination. Early walkers who do minimal crawling may not learn to use their eyes together as well as babies who do crawl a lot. At 9 to 12 months of age, babies should be using their eyes and hands together. They will begin to pull themselves up to a standing position. They should be able to grasp objects with their thumb and forefinger. Babies can now judge distances fairly well and throw. By 12 months of age, most babies will be crawling and trying to walk. And then you'll have to worry about baby proofing. So because the baby-sensitive eyes are constantly developing and changing, lighting, daylight, or electric light should be controlled and very well, not just in a NICU, but in your house, in your nursery, in all different situations. Effects of bright light can include excessive stimulation in newborns. The amount and sudden change of light can actually be stressful as well. Bright light can increase heart and respiratory rates and decrease oxygen saturations. Eye exams can increase sensitivity to light. ROP occurs in premature infants when there is an abnormal blood vessel development in the retina. Lighting should accommodate for sensitive eyes, but especially in ROP patients. This series of images includes NICUs where bright light and glaring surfaces are being controlled with blankets over incubators so that families and nurses can still observe and access the room when needed. So with better lighting control, we can start to limit the use of these blankets that are blocking the light to decrease the separation from the outdoors and just have different feasible design options. So if we're relying on lighting without controls, that can be an issue. But let's really start to look at our lighting design and controls, shading, and how everything's working together. So we've talked about how we see light. Let's talk about the properties of light and how to achieve the right quality of light. Let's start with the visual part of the electromagnetic spectrum. The spectrum is the range of all possible frequencies of radiation. The electromagnetic spectrum of an object has a different meaning, and it is instead the characteristic distribution of radiation emitted or absorbed by the particular object. So what does that mean? Well, surfaces are only properly perceived when they reflect specific amounts of light at certain wavelengths. Correct color information will reach the observer only if the illuminance levels are balanced, so sufficient blue, green, and red components. It is important to use sources with adequate blue to yellow spectral power in spaces where patients are being observed so that proper color rendering can be achieved. As humans, our eyes see a full spectrum of light, but only from about 400 to 700 nanometers, from red, green, to blue on the spectrum. Things like X-rays and radio wavelengths are out of our visual range. Daylight falls at about 450 nanometers, and if you were reading a color temperature scale or Kelvin temperature on a light bulb, this would also be equivalent to about 6,000 Kelvin. Notice the red and warm colors of sunset fall closer to that 700 nanometer level. So you're getting the warmer colors the higher up the scale you go, and the cooler blue or green colors the lower on the scale. The visual spectrum. So how can this affect newborns and patient care? So in the case of cyanosis, the appearance of blue or purple coloration of the skin or mucous membranes due to tissues near the skin surface having low oxygen saturation might not be able to be seen if the skin isn't rendered correctly. Another example is with jaundice, which you may have heard more often in these cases, is that a yellowish pigmentation of the skin and whites of the eyes caused by excess bilirubin in the blood. This occurs when that bilirubin, or the breakdown of red blood cells, builds up faster than a newborn's liver can break down and pass through the body. So without proper lighting, we would not be able to see these changes. And without the proper color rendering values of lighting, skin color might start to look bluer, whiter, warmer, and yellow, depending on what kind of sources we're using. So it's really important to look at the full picture here and what all we're designing. The scale for color rendering is the CRI, or Color Rendering Index. It is a quantitative measure of the ability of a light source to reveal colors of various objects, faithfully in comparison with an ideal or natural light source. Light sources with a high CRI are desirable in color critical applications. The scale ranges from 0 to 100, with 100 being the closest to daylight, the truest renderer of color. So in NICU situations or healthcare situations in general, where skin color is really important to see those different colors, you want a higher CRI. So lighting fixtures will list their CRI values, and that's something that when you're designing on cut sheets, if you're not seeing it, you should be asking the manufacturers. Usually in healthcare, you're looking at around an 80 minimum. So that's just something to keep an eye on when you're designing. Color temperature, that's something we just talked about also that plays a key role. So that's a method of describing the color characteristics of light, usually either warm or cool, and measuring degrees of Kelvin. Your typical household incandescent lamp is around 2800 K, while fluorescent sources are closer to 4000. Each lamp manufacturer provides different Kelvin temperatures for the same type of lamp though. It is important to keep color consistency in the same project and to specify the temperature for the right application. So you may be using a 3500 Kelvin color temperature lamp in your healthcare lighting, which would be the basic standard that I see a lot, but color temperature does not mean it's rendering well. So that's when you look to the CRI scale, because you can have a neutral, warm color temperature on the Kelvin scale, and then how well that renders could be different. So that's going back to that 0 to 100. So closer to 100, and that right in the middle color temperature scale, of course, depending on your application, is what you're looking for. Now, ORs might have cooler temperatures where waiting areas might have more warm color temperatures. So, of course, talk to your whole group of designers and really just try to pick the best kind of lighting for the right application. So you have different lamp types, but that each one has different color temperatures and CRI levels, so you really do have to do your research and choose the right lamps. Just because you're choosing light fixtures doesn't mean that that's where it has to end. You can specifically choose the lamps that get specified in those light fixtures. So to just go over this, incandescence, it's the warm, inviting quality. It has a higher CRI, so complementing to skin tones and psychologically appealing. LEDs come in a variety of color temperatures and CRIs and are getting more and more energy efficient and longer lasting every day. So keep an eye on LEDs as the lighting industry grows. Their lumen per watt value is increasing every day. So different lamp types, including incandescent, halogen, fluorescent, most recently LED, all have these different CRI levels. So again, just keep this in mind, but everything is getting more efficient and better color rendering as we go here. So now it's time for our next poll. So has your facility renovated or rebuilt a NICU in the past 10 years? Please answer yes or no. Okay, so it looks like kind of in the middle, but most people are leaning towards yes. So that's good to know. Thank you very much. So studies have shown that amber-red wavelengths of light do not disrupt the sleep cycle as much. So we're getting back to that circadian rhythm talk. So it doesn't disrupt the sleep cycle as much as blue or white light at night. New night lights and observation lights have an added amber LED light so that the nurses or doctors can observe patients at night. So you may have seen this on footwall lights, over bed lights, just different fixtures throughout the room, but it also offers enough light at night for patients or family to see by while making trips to the bathroom. And that's typically where you'll see that footwall light is between the bed and the bathroom, because that's where most patient falls happen. And most falls that happen in the hospital are related to exactly this. So it's not just to light up pathways anymore. It's really we're finding out that those warmer wavelengths don't disrupt the sleep cycle as much. And when you're in a healthcare environment, no matter what age you are, sleep is when the body repairs itself. So it's really important to get into that deep sleep and maintain that throughout the night, even when the nurse wants to come and check on you in the middle of the night. It's better for them to turn a warmer wavelength of light and a dimmer light on in the middle of the night than that bright white exam light that wakes everybody up. So at the opposite end of the spectrum is blue. And blue and white light, that's what keeps us up at night, but it's actually because it suppresses melatonin, and that's the hormone needed for sleep. And of course, it could just be a bright glaring surface, but blue can be actually of great use during the day when helping to regulate a person's circadian rhythm and or keeping seniors awake longer during the day to help them regulate their 24-hour clocks. So it can be useful with different phototherapy areas, but you really need to gear that kind of therapy towards the age group that you're identifying, and each kind of patient will have different individual needs. So phototherapy is the process of using light to eliminate bilirubin in the blood in the case of jaundice treatment. A baby's skin and blood absorbs the light waves, then that changes bilirubin into products instead of pigment that can then be eliminated. So around 430 to 490 nanometers is a proper part of the visual spectrum related to blue light of phototherapy. So again, this is a certain treatment for babies with jaundice that you may have seen and heard of Billy blankets before even, but this may be different for phototherapy used on older patients or on shift workers or in elderly care. So you really have to do the research before you place this kind of therapy into a program in your healthcare institutions. Shortwave ultraviolet radiation can also be used to kill bacteria and control the spread of infection in a healthcare environment. New industry design concepts are looking at different UV compartments of the patient room to help aid in sterilizing medical equipment while using light to notify the doctors of necessary tasks and to-do items in the room. For example, a concept that was recently studied was using red light, how that could be used to notify a doctor to wash their hands, and then green light when they're done. So not just a visual cue, but then having UV light could then sterilize that area using lighting for visual cues and disinfecting. There's really so much more that we can do with lighting if we spend time, maybe a little budget too, but there's a lot that can really be done with lighting, which I think is just very important to use these visual cues not only for proper lighting, but all these different parts. So design standards require at least one source of natural daylight to be visible from an infant patient care area. Daylight renders objects with a CRI of 100. A designer must balance the use of daylight with a patient's 24-hour clock as discussed earlier. So you have to consider glare conditions, heat gain, and also balance those natural views to the outdoors. Room finishes are equally important. The darker finishes can absorb light, while light finishes can reflect light. Each option adds or hinders a well-lit lighting design. Interior designers must work with lighting designers to achieve the correct balance. When possible, reduce glossiness and high reflectances that can cause glare. So if you're working with a designer or interior designer, lighting designer, architect, whatever it may be, talk about the finishes early on so that you can achieve the right light levels you need without creating glare as well. These images are good examples where both daylight and electric light with the wrong finishes or lack of shading can cause glare and veiling reflections. This can be an issue not just for the babies, but for the staff and family as well. So let's talk more about the history of NICU design, the good, the bad, and where our industry is headed now. The traditional NICU design was a large multi-bed ward that endured well into the 1980s, but clinicians found these tight quarters, which gave each infant only 20 to 30 square feet, created an assaultive environment that increased infection rates and environmental stimuli. After, there were smaller open bay rooms with multiple incubators. Amenity spaces for mothers and family privacy are located in close proximity. Here, only curtains are needed in between incubators. The downside is that there's no space for chairs, which is important for kangaroo or skin-to-skin care, especially when the baby needs to stay hooked up to equipment at the head wall. There's also greater risk for infection control in a larger room. Nurses can maintain visual contact more easily, however, because they're at a central location, but the ability to control lighting, noise, and sensitivity to temperature becomes an issue because you're having to monitor everyone at once and not get that individual control. But however, because people and different families do gather around the incubators, there's a really great support system and bonding between families that happen throughout this kind of design. So this does have its cons, but definitely its pros too. So semi-private rooms allow for more centralized care, more seating, and less infection control concern. However, privacy and sensitivity to noise, light, and sound is still an issue. In these cases, family rooms, lactation suites, and common areas are provided for the whole center adjacent to the pods, but not on an individual basis. Where we're bringing design now is that private rooms allow for a much lower risk of hospital-acquired infections, privacy, and personal control. There's usually one nurse assigned to the room at a time, and areas for the family mother within the room for lactation and privacy. The recommended standards for newborn ICU design suggest providing 120 to 150 square feet of space for each infant to maximize growth and neurodevelopment, which has come a long way from that 30 square feet that we were used to. This enables clinicians to customize the light, noise, and temperature in the baby's environment and promote family building. And now we're going to go into one more poll. So does your current NICU have a single room, family room, open bay layout, or both? What are you working on now? And we'll take a moment to get some feedback. Okay, so it looks like open bed layout is actually what's being designed a lot right now. So great to know. Thank you, everyone. So now we're getting somewhere. Let's break it down. Hospitals are now leaning more and more towards private NICUs if they have a room. So they should include an area for the patient, family, and nurse caregiver. So please look at your latest healthcare facility guidelines for specific size requirements moving forward, since we'll be talking mostly about lighting here. The infant patient area should have an exam light setting as well as a general or observational light. A 200-foot candle light level should be utilized for exam. This will come from the medical lighting equipment and should not be part of the general room lighting. You need 1 to 60 adjustable foot candles or light level, and that's needed next to the bed for necessary tasks from general room lighting fixtures. Multiple sources such as fluorescent or LED may be used as long as the CRI is 80 and above. So that's going again from that 0 to 100 scale. The closer to 100 we can get, the better color rendering you'll have, but 80 is the minimum. Light sources should be hidden with the room and the room should be indirectly lit when possible. Lensed, diffuse sources are optimal. Fixtures should be chosen so that dust collection is not an issue. Lighting control should be dimmable or zoned so that at any given point the area of the bed can be immediately darkened for transillumination. The family area should include a reading light and separate controls. Warmer color temperatures, as well as more residential feel, allows the family members to feel more at home. Since daylight can be an issue at different times of the day, shade control should be utilized in this area as well. This can also be tied into the lighting control system if desired. The nurse area should have separate lighting controls that can allow for that immediate on-off when entering the room. Task areas should be lit to a minimum of 35-foot candles. Keeping nurse stations and corridors attuned to the different times of day will aid in a person's circadian rhythm. So with general lighting and corridor lighting, and of course talking with your lighting designer and manufacturers, there's more that you can do than just designating these 3 different zones. If you add in dimming controls, if you add in tunable light to the correct applications, there's different ways that you can start mimicking the outdoors, doing that day to night lighting for the NICU, for the patients and babies, and creating a more comfortable feeling in that room throughout the day. Lighting fixtures should not promote dust collection, as I said earlier, and should be easily cleanable. Materials should permit cleaning without the use of hazardous chemicals. Fixtures should be sealed and able to be wiped down. All lighting equipment should be able to be accessed from below the ceiling plenum when possible. Hospital-acquired infections are the greatest cause of most infant death and sickness. Anything we can do to our patient rooms to help keep them clean is a plus. A lot of times, these light fixtures, if you are working in healthcare environments, you know that from the waist up doesn't necessarily get cleaned. So we as designers have to take a responsibility here to design not just the correct amount of lighting, the right color temperature, the desired controls, everything else but fixtures that will promote a healing environment. And that means no dust collecting areas when possible, no dust shelves, no built-in sort of diffusers that dust could rest on, and just anything that is easily wipeable will absolutely help the environment and give everyone a peace of mind. So keeping efficient sources in mind is a must when designing the lighting for a hospital. Hospital is allowed 1.21 watts per square foot with the building area method under ASHRAE. Exceptions to this are the lighting fixtures or equipment specifically designed for procedure lighting, so that falls under a different category. These areas do not need automatic control, however, dimming is recommended. When a building goes for LEED, the team must decide what percentage under ASHRAE standards they are trying to achieve. Since the LEED system is based on points, you may be able to obtain them in other areas than lighting, or design the project early on with efficient light sources, keeping this goal in mind. So keep in mind when you're picking out your lighting fixtures and your sources, yes, you can decrease your wattage with LED, but it may not be the appropriate source for you everywhere. Or if you have needs to decrease energy and wattage, then maybe you use that in the corridors or backup house areas where light levels are lower, so that you can really use the fixtures that you want to use in the specific patient areas, so that you can kind of get the most bang for your buck, and also those are going to be higher wattage areas, so that you can kind of balance out your whole project. So definitely talk about energy sources early on, and moving forward with your projects, getting everybody on the same page and running those calculations as early as possible. Okay, so what is next for lighting design and NICUs? Where are we moving in the future? We talked about private rooms and how that reduces, light, noise, temperature, everything can be more individually controlled. So that's really where the future is held with NICU design. So private rooms and more patient-centered design. So how can we start modeling the infant patient room around what our bodies need and how they operate throughout the day for the good of the patient, the family, and caregiver? Using our knowledge of circadian rhythms, patient-centered design, and individual controls will become even more important in the future of NICU design. So thank you for listening to this part of the presentation. Tammy will now tell you more about the model for patient and family-centered NICU.
Thank you, Lauren. As Lauren mentioned, I'm going to give you an overview of our patient and family-centered NICU project, which is the one that you see here on the screen. We started a year ago by hosting an international design competition in search of a NICU design solution that would enable families to remain in the NICU with their babies for the entire length of stay. Many from our jury of experts represented here continue to advise the project as we make decisions based on the current research. Our top 3 design projects are represented here, with first place going to Stantec for Hospital for Sick Children in Toronto, second place to Hort Copeland Mott for MedStar Franklin Square Medical Center in Baltimore, and third place to McMillan Paston Smith Architecture for Bon Secours St. Francis Health System in Greenville, South Carolina. Our team developed a hybrid solution inspired by the top submissions and heavily based on the recommended standards for newborn ICU design. Our jury turned content committee decided to model a family lounge alcove across the corridor from the single family NICU room in order to address the need for families to form social or support networks while on the unit. Many families remain on the unit 3 months with their babies. So with the benefits of moving to a single family patient room, we created a space that would be allocated on a 1:8 or 1:12 ratio, or basically 1 lounge per pod, to allow family members to connect with one another. So this is not meant to replace the main family lounge, but it would be an area close to a cluster of rooms where family members could break away from the patient room while still maintaining visibility of their patient's room. This space provides a retreat on the floor with diverse seating, a coffee bar, artwork, sound masking, and accent lighting. Inside the room, we envisioned a clean footwall casework unit that would serve multiple uses for staff and families. This was built completely from solid surface material, isolating the large scrub sink that you see here from the preparation counter with a full-height splash guard. We've provided task lighting here with the amber night light capability above the sink. Finally, our goal was to provide a family space that empowered parents to remain in the hospital 24 hours with their baby, if possible. Based on parent feedback and the current best practice for delivering family-centered care, we developed this space. It includes a glider at the bedside that reclines to an almost flat position, promoting extended kangaroo care at the bedside. It also includes a sleeper sofa that doubles as an eating or work area and provides storage. We didn't forget a bathroom for mom, who is a postpartum patient and has needs that should be accommodated in a private bathroom. And there's also an education station that engages parents with baby care videos and is visible from the sleeper sofa as well as the recliner. If you turn and look back behind the parent's recliner at the head wall system, you'll notice that the vertical columns, which provide downlights and uplights, are angled to conceal the clinical functions from the parent's side of the bed. It provides dedicated outlets, shelving, light controls for parents, which is suggested in the new recommended standards. Also on the nurse's side of the bed, there's a master switch for controlling all room lighting to achieve immediate darkness for transillumination purposes. This slide shows the room entrance and the nurse work alcove with task lighting. And this one shows the soft accent lighting used in the corridor, which we used in this case for a backlit donor piece. Lauren, could you describe each fixture in a little bit more detail and talk about the ones that we use specifically for this project?
Thanks, Tammy. So I'm going to start with the top right of the page. You'll notice the sconce that we used in the family area of the patient room. The sconce itself actually is a very soft acrylic diffuser, which diffuses the general white light, which is not on in the picture, but it is an option for just your general lighting in the room or in that family area. The sconce has curving edges with a top and bottom lens to keep dust out. And what you're seeing in the picture is the amber LED nightlight on. So it doesn't necessarily have to be just for the patient that we have come to notice, I guess, in healthcare environments. It should really be spread out throughout the room because the family, not only can they use that as just a small reading light to walk around the room by, but really it doesn't disturb the patient as much as that bright white nightlight does. So in the NICU area, I think this is really important because, again, you want that repairing sleep that you really get at night. And then below in the bottom right, we talked about the accent lighting in the hallway that we used here. This is a fixture that can be mounted on the wall or from the ceiling as a pendant, but just using a large diffused glowing surface as an accent light to bring something more decorative, and also in this case using our donor brands on the fixture and integrating everything together. On the other side of the hallway, we use a recessed decorative light with artwork. So usually you do have the budget for artwork in a healthcare environment, but infection control, dust, keeping the artwork clean, these things all really do play with it as well. So integrating the artwork into lighting and having both used as not only light for the corridor, but accent light as well was a really nice feature. This artwork in particular in this fixture, you can wipe this all down. The ink in the artwork is UV stabilized, so it won't fade over time, and it won't scratch off if people go up to it. It's a high textured artwork that actually helps with visual distraction for that patient environment. So when a family is there for days, weeks, months on end sometimes, having little areas of visual distraction like this where you can kind of get your mind off of what's going on and that traumatic situation you're in is really important. And this can be used through artwork, lighting, warm, soft finishes, and a number of different ways and areas. And the last item we have shown here is our vanity light with diffuse lenses over the sink area. And this light, again, it's lensed on the top and bottom, so you're not getting dust into the light fixture. It's easily cleanable, and we are also providing that amber LED light. So in this instance, you see both the vanity light on together with the amber LED light, and you could switch that separately. So you could have that amber LED light coming from the family area, the sink area, the more task area where nurses may be working, or the patient area if you included it next to the bed. So you have a few different options here. So these are the fixtures we used, and we hope that you'll come and see them at the healthcare conference next week. Tammy, back to you.
I'd like to just take a second and ask if anyone has questions, to please go ahead and submit your questions now. And we'd like to recommend that you do take a look at the recommended standards for newborn ICU design. This document, which again came out just last year, was a great guide for us, not only on the lighting component, but on every consideration in the room. And we will have it in our references, which I believe you'll be able to pick up in the handout that you'll receive access to immediately following the webinar. But I think this is the point where we can take questions. Okay. So Lauren, first question I have here is for the amber, the lights that toggle from white to amber, how are they actually controlled?
So usually you have two circuits when you're doing a light fixture like that. And in most cases, I see the night lights, well, specifically for NICU and an incubator where you might not have a better remote control like you would in a normal patient room bed control situation, you would have a separate switch for the night light. So you can turn on your general lighting. Maybe you have two wall switches on the wall right next to each other, or you can locate that general light again at the door. You might have different manufacturers will have different switches or buttons that you can control even more advanced, where you might have a 5-button control and you could hook up one circuit to the general light, one circuit to the night light, and you could also dim the general lighting. So you really have a few options there, and I would just recommend, if you're an architect, lighting designer, get together and decide what, well, probably your budget can afford to do, but I would talk to your control manufacturer early on about their options, and that can kind of help you with your design.
Okay, great. This is a more specific question. If you would, I think we'll need to, Lauren, if you would just go back a few slides to show the one of the images of the lounge. The question is about the decorative signature piece out in the corridor, and it's asking about the depth, so it's getting a little bit of detail. So this fixture, could you just describe a little bit about, I guess, how deep that fixture is? Is it surface mounted, or is that reset? Oh, well,
it's okay. So the narrow fixture on the bottom left of the page here, that's all recessed, and it's about 3.5 inches into the wall. So you do have a frame that's sitting on the wall. You could actually get that with a mud flange if you wanted to. And that artwork is an option for this fixture. So if you just wanted a recessed slot light, you could use that with a matte white acrylic lens. This fixture comes in 2, 3, 4, 5-foot lengths. You can mount it vertically, horizontally, in the wall or the ceiling. So there's a lot of options for you. And just if you want to shoot me an email after this, I can give you more guidance if you are interested in surface mounting it or doing anything more unique with the installation of it. I'd be open to talking more about that and seeing if we can't figure out something.
Okay, great. Let's go to the next question we have here. Okay, so the question here is about, again, the parent's light in the parent area, and the question is, could you please go into more detail about the cleanability of the lights? Design looks nice, but how easy is it to clean?
The sconce that we use here, you have a few options. You can get a hard acrylic shade or a tri-laminate shade, which has a little more movement to it, but still a cleanable surface. So that's fabric laminated with a clear coating on it so that you can still wipe it all down. This fixture is curved and it bends off the wall slightly, so you can reach all surfaces if you do want to just wipe it down, and you can use the regular hospital bleach cleaners on this fixture. It also has a frosted acrylic top lens to it, so you can wipe it all down, and the idea is that no dust is going to fall and get in there. We also have the amber LED nightlight portion on the base of it, and if you wanted a clear lens to cover all of that so that you're not blocking the light but still sealing it, you can get that as well. So this is a piece of formed acrylic that has adhered lenses to it, so it does form a seal so that no dust will get in, and it's just easily wipeable. You don't want any fixture that has a high texture on the outside of it or fabric that might collect dust and hold on to it. So I would recommend acrylic just for durability. You don't really want glass in this kind of a situation. It might break or crack. So just something that can go through the wear and tear of the typical patient area, but still look nice and soft for the families as well.
Okay, great. I think we have time for one more, and it says here, suggestions are welcome for control of brighter housekeeping lights. So in other words, preventing accidental use while the infant is present.
I would say you want to look at your control settings in the room. If you do a programmable like 5-button, like a scene control system, you could have one button set for cleaning, and even if it's the same control in every single room and the same handed patient room layouts, you don't want anybody confused. So you want labels on everything, even if it's just on, off, dimming, cleaning, nightlight, whatever it may be. And I don't know that there's necessarily a way to not press that button if the baby's in there, so that you don't get that bright white light, but there would be things that control manufacturers can talk to you about as far as overrides and time clocks, so that maybe that cleanable button isn't available at a certain time of day or when a certain other switch is on. So there's things that they can tie into each other. So I think it's, again, a conversation that if you have an idea, and of course look at the guidelines for specific requirements that you need to meet, but just talk to your control manufacturers about the design of the room in the beginning.
And just to add to that, obviously our simulation lab is just that. It's not an actual hospital setting. But our clinicians have told us that they are moving away from any type of overhead light in the room, because basically task lighting for procedures could be mounted to the head wall or to the incubator itself, and then the task lighting for the counter is there at the counter, but there are no lights that are actually mounted in the ceiling on some of the newer NICU projects, but the lights are bright enough in some of the other areas. In addition, of course, there are the incubator covers for the babies that are very sensitive that are also used, and the incubator that we used had different zones, and so it was easy to cover some parts of it and leave some parts open. So for what that's worth, it seems from a clinical standpoint as if a lot of the clinicians who have talked to us and have come through our lab are saying that they're moving away from the overhead light altogether. Okay, we've reached the end of the webinar. I'd like to remind you to please, I'm sorry, do we have time for that last poll? Okay, great. So just quickly, how many participants are currently working on or planning a NICU project? And we'll just take maybe about 5 seconds for this poll. Okay. Okay, so we'll close the poll and share the results. Okay, so it was 27% actually working on or planning a new NICU. Thank you. Remember to please complete your survey, which is going to pop up on your screen immediately following the broadcast. This is the way that you're able to request a certificate of attendance or to enter your AIA number, and we'll post that to your transcript. We'll also send you a link to the handout from this presentation. It'll come to you immediately following the webinar, as well as the contact information for our presenters. Please join our mailing list or check our event schedule at patientcentereddesign.org/events for more information about upcoming sessions. And we hope to see you at the Healthcare Design Conference this weekend, but if not, we will be in touch with you with future webinar sessions. This concludes our webinar for today. Thank you for joining us.